Hello there. Um, to start off with the first question, which is, what is democracy for you? That is a very complicated question, to be honest, because there's a lot of levels and a lot of different definitions of democracy. I feel like there's the most basic definition, which is the political definition, which is when the people, when people of society, people within a specific country or state, they have the right to use their voice in order to vote and to have a say within the political organization of said community. But I feel like that's a little bit too political. I feel like democracy can be a little bit more about, the liberties that each person has, the being able to have health care, being able to not worry so much about debt, about, financial necessities. And that isn't so much democracy, but I personally feel like democracy is a lot about that, about the liberty of being able to decide what one wants to do in life, and not so much do what one has to do. I mean that because in Europe, since kids are little, they're able to decide what they want to be in their whole life. They can choose their trajectory, whereas here in Mexico, it's more about the necessities that come up. We are very fortunate people within our socioeconomic group because we can choose these kinds of things. But the majority of people in society here in Mexico cannot do that, or in other second and third world countries. So yeah, that's kind of like, for me, that's a little bit about democracy, the being able to choose your own path and what you want to do in life, rather than need to do something in order to survive. Stop. I mean, it may not be correct, but at least that's my personal definition of democracy without being a little bit too political. Then, how do I relate to the documentaries, that definition to the documentary or our activities in class? Well, I feel like the documentary itself showed that exact contrast between first world countries and other nations and other societies that do not have such well developed you know social and economic systems. Yeah, I feel like it it's truly sad to see these kinds of things, because for people in the documentary, you could tell how they were completely oblivious to a lot of things. They didn't know how our lifestyles were, or at least how the lifestyles of people in the USA were, and I find it quite interesting, honestly. Which that kind of sends me to the second. I'm sorry, to the third question, which was, what was the most interesting part for you about the documentary? And it was that people, they're so. It's not about ignorance. It's just that they have such a well established economy, such a well established society, that they do not believe that there are countries that have so many specific issues, even though they are well financially. Like, the best example is USA. I mean, this whole documentary was based on the comparison between the US and a lot of European countries, and that's quite strange because the US is the leading economy of the world. It is one of the biggest countries in a lot of aspects. It could be with the economy, the GDP, with innovation, with technology. There's a lot of things that the U.S. does very well, and yet there's a lot of aspects about their society and their structure that aren't very well designed. And I find that quite interesting, how, despite being one of the leaders of the world, it's still, in many ways, similar to a second world country or even a third world country. And then, how does this apply to Mexico? I feel like it applies because it's very similar, though the way that we live here in Mexico is very different to the way that they live in Europe. I feel like a lot of those commodities and a lot of those uh, well-established social, foundations, they don't exist here. Those are kind of like fairy tales for us. That is something that people can't really conceive because it just doesn't sound real. I mean, how could a government, how could a society be so perfect? It doesn't really make sense. And it's not that it's perfect, it's just very functional. And honestly, that's not how it is here in Mexico. And why or what is it different in our context in Mexico? I feel like it's important to state the fact that, as I mentioned before, this documentary was made in comparison to the US. So the US is one of the most advanced countries. It is considered a first world country. Now imagine Mexico, which is considered second, maybe even third world countries in some areas, the actual differences. It would be interesting to make a similar documentary about the lifestyle in the US and the lifestyle here in Mexico, and how it would also similarly be very different. And yeah, I mean, I feel like it's kind of like a little bit of a de escalation here in Europe. Super well established societies, very strong economies, and everything is practically perfect. Not utopic, but it's, as close as perfect we to what we as close as perfect. I'm having a little bit of trouble there. It is very close to perfect. Then we have the U.S., which is kind of in the middle, which compared to those countries does not seem perfect, but it's still, it's a very good country. They have a very good lifestyle. And then there's Mexico, which is even lower, but it's still, we still have a lot going for us. We still have a relatively strong economy. Hopefully that stays the same in these upcoming years. And then you have even lower countries, which are third world countries, which are less developed countries, such as countries in Asia, or countries, I mean, Asia, I mean like other countries, not China, Japan, or Korea, because those are actually very developed countries. But I mean also like African countries or some Middle Eastern countries, a lot of different nations that are not as developed. But yeah, I think I've rambled a bit too much this time. Yeah, thank you.